A little hoarse today, partner. Late with the Johnnies, but it's all good. So I'm certainly, these are the conversations that you and I have had really for a decade now. We've had these conversations for a long time, and it always comes back to two things. The first question is, how can the NFL hiring process become more equitable? Number one. And the answer for me is you cannot force somebody to hire somebody. Now, in between, there's a million different layers to strip away, and we'll have the conversation again. But that really, to me, is the root, even though, Flores takes it in a few different directions. Apparently, if ownership is saying, here's $100,000 for throwing a game, that's wow. But I need you to take the reins. Your Giants are involved here, a class action suit. This is incredibly messy. This is a nightmare for the NFL.
Yeah,
take the reins.
It's less about, what the league can do or has tried to do to get more minority coaches. But, first we'll start with the specific allegations in this suit. Obviously, the Giants are involved because of the Brian Flores, what he called a sham interview that happened last Thursday, I believe. I think it was Thursday, because Leslie Frazier was in on Friday, but the sham interview after getting a text message from Bill Belichick congratulating him on the job. Bill Belichick obviously was right in the wrong Brian, and that's a whole nother story. This about alleged text message. I got to say this, but I'm assuming that he actually did actually.
Can you generate a fake text? Sure.
Yeah, of course.
Do I think it's from Belichick?
Yeah.
Yes.
And do I do Belichick screwed up? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, but was it intentional or malicious? No.
No.
He was not trying to sabotage
he just screwed up.
The NFL.
He just screwed up.
His vision's going because he's getting older. He probably saw the wrong Brian.
That's exactly right.
That's it.
And, what does that mean? Does that mean that Bill Belichick had knowledge that the Giants were hiring Brian Daboll, and he wanted to congratulate him on whatever day it was, Monday or Tuesday? I mean, you can look at it so many different ways until we get to the bottom of that. I can't talk to the merit of that. But
if it's true, that is highly disconcerting.
It is.
That's a big problem for the Giants.
The one thing, and I said this on Gio and
was the Gio and Recco show today?
Gio and Recco today. I was going to say Boomer and Gio, but it's actually Gio and Recco today. I was surprised that the Giants didn't hit back harder or more aggressively and say, because they said it's, and it's really their personality. So I guess that's why they did do it the way that they did, saying, we went through a thorough process. We ended up hiring Brian Daboll. Brian Flores was part of this conversation to the 11th hour. I paraphrase that. Mm-hmm. But I'm surprised that it didn't come off more, how dare you, question our integrity, right? Our intent. Mm-hmm. Just because someone sent you a text message on Monday that had inaccurate information, and now because of that, you're lumping us into this systemic racist hiring practice. That's actually really damning. It's a damning accusation, and I'm surprised the Giants didn't hit back harder. If I was, I would have hit. I emotionally heard that and said, what the hell are you talking about? I'm surprised the Giants didn't go that way, but I understand why they didn't. The bigger issue, BT, is the Rooney Rule broken? And are minority coaches just getting interviews because they have to get interviews? The answer is yes. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that I dislike the Rooney Rule, but I think executing something as advanced and technical and specific as the Rooney Rule is just hard to do, because just like we know in any type of relationship, whether it's a family relationship, a business relationship, it's all about, not to be redundant, the relationship. And if you don't have that prior to having a conversation with someone, it's really hard to determine in 2 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours if this person is the right relationship for your organization. And so, the Rooney Rule requires you to interview minority candidates, but are you really developing a relationship, getting to know that person?
Not in 3 hours, you're not.
Exactly. And so as a result, you get these default back to the white candidate. At least that's how people will present it. But it's really the default to the guy that the general manager or the owner actually knows. And the perfect example is Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. Mm-hmm. They've worked together for 4 years, right? There's just a familiarity with each other. The relationship is already there. There's a trust that it's not manufactured. It's not fake. The other example, and I don't know if this falls in this category of the Rooney Rule, I'm not sure what the Minnesota Vikings have done, is their general manager, Adolfo Mensa, who worked with the 49ers, 2013, 14 or so, 15. I think he'd been there for a few years. He was there for a few years, and now he's the general manager of the Minnesota Vikings. And, yeah, they interviewed some minority candidates. Patrick Graham was there for 7 or 8 hours the other day. But he trusts Jim Harbaugh. And it's not that Patrick Graham wouldn't be a good head coach for the Minnesota Vikings as a minority, but his first job as a minority general manager, he wants to get it right.
He wants to win.
He wants to win. He wants to know that what's going to happen with the talent that's on this Minnesota team and with the coach. He wants to know. He knows that what Jim Harbaugh can do because he saw him do it in San Francisco. We talked about it yesterday. It was 3 straight double-digit win seasons and a trip to the Super Bowl. So it's so complicated. It's really easy to just say, yeah, the NFL is racist. Oh, the owners are racist. It's really easy to say it from 30,000 feet, but the execution of putting together a staff and hiring a head coach as it pertains to the Rooney Rule is not as easy as people want to make it sound.
Okay. Listen, do I think the NFL is inherently racist? No, I don't. Do I think the NFL's full of it on a lot of levels? Yeah, I do. Putting all these slogans that, if actually applied, are things that can change society, which we're all after, but they seem empty so often. End racism, decals on the helmet. I mean, what are we really doing here?
It's optics.
Yeah, exactly. It's a talking, but it's a gesture. It's a hollow gesture that too often is done to placate people. Okay, well, look what we're doing. Look at how progressive we are. Look at how proactive we are. Look at what we're trying to do. But what are you really doing? You got one black coach out of 32 teams.
It's still status quo.
It's still status quo. Now, listen, I am of the firm belief the best person should get the job. I will always believe that. You and I have always used the word meritocracy. But, where this becomes very blurred and where it angers and frustrates many minorities, and I understand this, I'm sensitive to this, is that, that level of familiarity that you just spoke about when you know somebody, when you walk into a room and there's people with, similar thoughts, whether it's politics, religion, finance, sports teams. It's just it's an easier entrance into the room, and it's a more comfortable conversation and exchange of ideas. And over time, that builds into something that is strong, even if the coach you hire fails. Like the initial jump off point, it feels right. The problem is not. See, I wish I had the answer to this, man. What I find so frustrating about this, we get on the air, I could tell Trey Julius Randle, Thibs needs to do this, the Yankees need to sign this guy, Cashman's got to stop doing this, but I don't have the answer here because until you have more, I guess the answer is this, more minority ownership, you are going to have this.
I think it's less.
You're going to have this.
I honestly think it's less minority ownership because let's face it, the valuations of these teams it's prohibitive for a minority to come buy it and be a principal owner of an NFL team. It's billions of dollars.
I'm not saying to give it to him 70 cents on the dollar. I'm just saying, like, as a premise, as long as all the owners are white, this is not changing. It's not changing.
That's not going to change.
It's not, and you can't take a team away from a guy because he hires a white person.
Yeah,
you cannot do that.
That is not going to happen. The NFL is not all of a sudden going to have significant minority ownership around its teams. It's just not going to happen.
I agree.
These are billion-dollar entities that these owners have held, some of them for decades, eons. You know what I mean? Or from the inception, if you count some teams like the Mariners or the Rooneys, et cetera.
And how hard is it to take a team away? Richardson in Carolina.
That's right.
It took a litany of situations, myriad missteps on his part to lose his team.
I think it's less about that, and I think it's more as it pertains. Well, so, as an aside, BT.
Yep.
When you look in the front office, the Rooney Rule is actually working. There are not a lot, but there are more than coaches for sure, minority general managers and assistant GMs and those heads of pro scouting, et cetera, that are working their way into the front offices of NFL teams.
I agree with that.
The Rooney Rule is working in a sense, interestingly, so much faster than it did from the head coaching situation because they didn't institute the Rooney Rule for general managers until I want to say it was like 5 or 6 years after they did it for the head coaches, right? And so when they expanded it, as we all remember, so it's working in some regards. For coaches, it's not. And you're right, there isn't an easy answer. But if there was one, it would be coaches like Bruce Arians, who are, intentional about having minority candidates. Like his whole staff is minority. His defensive coordinator and Todd Bowles, his offensive coordinator and Byron Leftwich, his assistant head coach Harold Goodwin, he's black.
Females.
Yep. The special teams coordinator, he's black as well. He's got 2 feet. Like it's intentional.
Yeah.
His staff. And when you do that and you have success, like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, obviously they won a Super Bowl a year ago. Byron Leftwich is now put that in quotes, a hot candidate to be a head coach in the NFL. Todd Bowles hasn't gotten a second chance, but he could be another hot candidate because he's had success under a coach who intentionally hired minorities for those specific roles.
See, but Bowles to me is an interesting case study.
Yeah.
Because you look at somebody like Adam Gase, who didn't do much in Miami, and just immediately.
Oh, I'm glad you're going here, by the way.
Because
this is actually the issue.
This is the problem.
This is actually
a big part
the issue.
of the problem.
This is the bigger issue than the initial head coaching issue.
The willingness to open the door for failed coaches and varying degrees of failure, understood. I'm talking about white coaches, and elevate them to that prominent spot immediately is incredibly apparent. I mean, we can document this. There's 30, 40 names we can rifle through.
Adam Gase is one.
Yeah, he's obviously Patrick. I mean, there's a ton of them.
Dan Quinn could have taken any job this year if
Quinn
he had decided to go back.
But he at least got to a Super Bowl. I don't look at him as like Adam Gase.
I know.
Adam Gase was
but
bad.
He got fired 2 years ago.
Well, that's true.
And now he's already a head coach again?
And now somebody like Todd Bowles, who, all right, we all know they lost in Buffalo with Fitzpatrick, 10 wins, didn't make the playoffs. Yeah, it was a gut punch. But the guy, and he wasn't exciting with the microphone, and he wasn't inspiring. I don't think he was a great coach, but here, what he did with Tampa, what he did to Mahomes in the Super Bowl, completely twisting the philosophy. Oh, he's going to blitz him, 40 times. No, he blitzed him 11% of the time of the Super Bowl, completely confounded him because he was able to get away. He was not so married to one idea. It showed great adaptability, which shows for somebody, to me, that's going to be a good coach if he gets another chance. But he's not getting that chance, apparently.
Right.
Not even in the coach. He's not even a hot name right now.
That's right.
So that is a big, big problem. And you mentioned, and I don't know that everybody knows this about you. I do. But, when Tiki's dad was at Virginia Tech, his roommate was Bruce Arians, okay?
Right.
So why is Bruce Arians comfortable hiring minorities? Because he grew up. Let's face it.
He grew up with the brothers, man.
Let's face it. When your pops was in the room, there was probably a sock on the door. And Bruce was like, yo, man, my man Barber's getting busy.
That's right.
And then when it was time for him to get busy, your dad put a sock on the door. Whatever they put on the door to let him know, don't come in, I'm getting busy. They were boys. They were tight. They understood each other's culture. This was in the 70s.
Yeah.
So now in the 2020s, there's familiarity, there's comfort, and there's empowerment.
Yes.
But if you're always in the same room with the same people, nothing's changing, no matter what we say on the radio.
Bruce will tell you he was the minority in a lot of the circles that he would walk in. And so I asked my mom about this once, actually, and because my mom and dad were at Virginia Tech, and my mom would tell me, I was like, what was it like? Because, when Bruce told us he was the first, my dad and Bruce Arians were the first black-white roommates, athletes ever at Virginia Tech. Like, they just didn't happen.
73?
No, I think it was 69 to 72, I think, and then they were graduate assistants. And so, when you think about that, it's like, wow, really?
Yeah.
That concept seems foreign, but in actuality, that was the reality for the world at the time. And so I was talking to my mom about this. I was like, what was it like? Bruce is the dude, man. Like, what was it like? He's like, she told us, after football games, like the white players would, go this way and hang out over there.
Yeah.
And the black players, they'd go this way and hang out over here. And so I said, Mom, well, what did Bruce do? And she goes, Bruce would do whatever the hell he wanted.
And a lot of times, bouncing to both parties.
Exactly.
He
was back and bouncing back and forth.
And a little Rolling Stones.
But you say that, and it's anecdotal because it's truly personal to me. Bruce is family to me, right? So it's truly personal. But because of that experience, Bruce Arians, when he comes to the NFL, he sees, first of all, the black athlete. and then the black assistant coach, different than I think any in a different way, because it's been his entire life.
Yeah.
Right?
Even in college, you did that with Todd Bowles from Temple. So
That's
it's not
exactly
just in the
right.
NFL.
That's exactly right.
It's
But
always
it's
been
been
there.
his entire life. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that these white coaches that didn't have these experiences, are lesser. I'm just saying that the reason that Bruce Arians has two coordinators who are potential head coaches in the NFL is because that's his experience. That's the familiarity that he has. And so, how many other coaches have that? Right? How many other potential head coaches have that experience so that they help increase this pipeline that ultimately comes to Rooney Rule? It's small. And so how do you fix that? I don't know how you fix it.
I don't have the answer.
Nobody has the answer.
That's the problem. I mean, we can theorize all day and try to solve the world on a radio show, but there's not – well, there is one. I keep saying that, and then I keep coming to the one answer. Until ownership, the color of ownership changes and there's a little more diversity, this is what we'll have. Listen, they have tried – I think it is patently offensive and unfair to attack, and I know you're not, and obviously, to attack the Rooney Rule, the merit. I don't mean the way it's applied and the way it actually works, but the merit, like the spirit of the Rooney Rule. It's coming from a great place. A couple of years ago, they added incentive where you can gain draft equity.
I remember this.
Remember this?
Yes.
Like middle round picks, or I think a third or a fourth, depending upon the role, the assistant GM or GM. And they are trying. I don't know how you reinvent the wheel, but I know this. You can persuade. You can tweak components of the process. I just added a couple of reasons how they have or ways they have. We can complain. We can yell. We can lament loudly what's wrong. You cannot force somebody to hire somebody that they don't want to hire. And no matter how many calls we take, and we're going to take a gazillion today, nobody can convince me otherwise. And I'm open to everything. How do you tell somebody, hire this person? Imagine if Odyssey went to Chris Olivero and Spike and our bosses, and before that, the great Chernoff, the legend. Hopefully he's enjoying retirement, even though he kept us there on the national side for far too long. I mean, imagine if they came and they were like, "You have to hire this person." How do you do that?
You can't.
You can try. It's not going to be a very cohesive, productive workplace, I don't think. All right, let's get a break now. Break on time. 877-337-6666. A lot of things to hit. We are open to every aspect of this conversation, but I'm telling you one thing. If you start getting into politics, you're getting clipped immediately. I don't care what you think about politics. You shouldn't care what I think about politics. And when you have conversations like this, it's easy to branch into politics. If you try to do it on the show, you're getting clipped. Don't waste our time. 877-337-6666. Tiki and Tierney on the Fan.